Let me see if I can go to the beginning here. And let me know when you guys can see it.
Oh, we can see it now, John.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So I will be talking about Mazor Robotics. This is a small robotics company. My recommendation for Mazor is buy. The current price Mazor is, as of today, is $21.66 a share. And the target price that we're shooting for based on a FY18 enterprise value to revenue ratio is 27.53. So as I mentioned, current price 21.66. The 52-week range is 831 to 28.55. The shares outstanding are 23.8 million with a market cap of about 530 million. As I mentioned, the price target is about $27 a share that we're looking for here. So what is Mazor Robotics? It's an Israeli-based spinal robotics company founded in 2001. They were the first to market with a surgical guidance system specifically for spinal procedures. So we've all heard of the company Intuitive. They do a lot of general urology, colorectal surgeries. Mazor is specifically for spinal surgeries. So the Mazor system allows surgeons to transition from freehand techniques that many surgeons use today to highly precise guided procedures. The products include the Renaissance system, which was the original device, and now recently launched in November, the Mazor X. The customer base is represented by hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, and the users are the neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons specifically. Indications for this device are open and minimally invasive spinal procedures. So for spinal fusions, correction of spinal deformity, biopsy collection, tumor excision, cement augmentation, and now newly developed applications for the cranial procedures with the newer Mazor X. On the right here is the management team. The newest addition is Christopher Prentice, who's the US CEO. So just to give a sense, I know it's a technical product, so just to give a quick overview of what we're talking about here. Basically what the Mazor system does is it gives a surgeon a preoperative blueprint for what they want to do during surgery. They map that out with software. They affix the robot itself to the spine during surgery, and then they upload the software. They basically sync intraoperative fluoroscopy images with the software to allow them to guide their tools and implants with up to 1.5 millimeters of accuracy. Robotics in general is something that's emerging, and the value proposition for robotics, we're seeing improved patient outcomes. They accommodate different types of procedures, whether open or minimally invasive, and there's a larger indication now for patients to receive minimally invasive procedures because of robotics. They're resulting in decreased blood loss, decreased infection rates, shorter hospital stays, faster return to work. Robots are reducing surgeon fatigue as well. Surgeons are doing multiple surgeries a day, and robots help reduce that fatigue that can take place throughout the course of a day after multiple procedures. It improves efficiency and accuracy intraoperatively, and there's a huge potential for the reduction of costly revisions and complications. And then they really give surgeons an opportunity to treat otherwise inaccessible parts of the body. So robotics in general is one of the fastest growing medical device segments, forecasted to see basically what is now a $4.2 billion industry. People are forecasting that to become an $11.4 billion industry by 2020. The revenue model specifically is comprised of capital sales, so the robot itself being purchased. There's a huge service contract associated with that. That's a constant ongoing service and support agreements are an ongoing part of the revenue model, and then disposables as well on a case-by-case basis. And then I've mentioned some specialties that I covered earlier. But specifically for the Mazor product in the spinal robotics market, there's currently a $26 million market and forecasted to increase to $2.8 billion by 2022. There's a Becker's Spine Review report that estimates that spinal guidance will achieve a 35%, when it achieves a 35% penetration rate in the country, spine surgeons will essentially demand for their hospitals to bring in this technology. And hospitals are now focused on outcomes as reimbursement is changing and moving towards outcome-based measures. Robots will help hospitals and surgeons achieve those measures. So Mazor as a company, they've been a rapidly developing company. As I mentioned, in November, they launched the new surgical assurance platform, which is the Mazor X. They are currently ahead of the competition by what some analysts believe is about 2 years. As I mentioned, their revenue drivers are similar to those of other robotics companies. So you have placement, service, and disposables. And for Mazor, the system placement represents about 51% of their revenue. Disposables represent 31% of their revenue. And the services and support agreements represent about 18% of their revenue. The strategy itself, it launched Mazor X at the North American Spine Society meeting in November in Boston. And they launched this new platform that combines these new analytical tools, multi-source data, and tracking. They're also expanding indications to help diversify their product portfolio from spinal implant or spinal procedures only to cranial and orthopedic procedures as well. There's also been, as of May, a collaboration between Mazor and Medtronic. And this agreement basically that they signed initially started as a lead share program and a co-distribution of the devices, and it's grown from that. So Medtronic has invested over $40 million in Mazor at this point, and strategically purchased and placed 15 Mazor X systems. Most of these were placed in educational systems that you can imagine as residents come through these programs, they're now starting to get experience with robotics, which helps drive the cause of Mazor. So that deal also, in partnering with a company like Medtronic, it enhances the profile and presence of Mazor rather. And it really broadens their geographic footprint for all the products. In addition, they basically overnight brought in 150 representatives to help drive Mazor technology. So this was a tenfold increase in their sales presence. As far as comparables are concerned, this is a newer technology, so we don't have a number of publicly traded companies to run comps on, which I found was a little challenging in this case, but I was able to pull some different comps. I've seen some recent acquisitions. MedTech, specifically their ROSA robot, was acquired very recently in 2016. This is a French company. The acquisition was for $132 million. And their 2015-16 revenue, based on their fiscal year, was $11.5 million. And then their multiple of enterprise value to revenue that I was able to calculate based on the acquisition cost was 11.5. Excelsius is another robotics company, and these are all robotics companies specific to spine, just like Mazor. Excelsius is another robotics company that was acquired in 2014 by Globus. They currently have a CE mark in Europe, but they do not have FDA approval. Acquisition price was $50 million in 2014. The Verb surgical robot is a coordination between DePuy and Google, and the Verily Life Sciences division that's part of Alphabet. Again, this is not an FDA-approved product yet, so Mazor does have some lead time on these companies right now, but these are robotics companies that are coming, that we'll see emerge down the road. KB Medical is another one in a similar situation, not FDA-approved in the US, but have submitted and have received their CE mark in Europe. Just talking about the opportunity, we've all heard of Intuitive Surgical. This is a huge robotics company that focuses, as I mentioned, on other types of procedures, general procedures and others. And just to give a perspective of where robotics has gone and is going, Intuitive established in 2000, and the returns are 3,687% in 16 years. So, in a way, Mazor we see as becoming the Intuitive of orthopedics and neurosurgery, whereas Intuitive doesn't really overlap into those fields. Mazor could really establish a presence in those specialties. They have over 3,500 surgical systems installed and 3 million procedures done at this point in time, over 3 million procedures done. So we can see that the technology is currently robust, but it's also expanding significantly. There are a number of risks and challenges here for Mazor. There's regulatory risks, just like any company who's needs FDA approval. Mazor must comply with FDA guidelines and bears the risk of potential recalls that could basically distract the company, management in the company, and could really set that off course rapidly if something were to happen. Adverse events, again, could lead to significant revenue loss and impact financials significantly. Competition, as I mentioned before, there are a number of companies that are looking at these robotics companies, and they're emerging. They're not there right now, but they are on their way. So Mazor needs to be ready to respond. Cash and financing, Mazor has a negative cash flow at this point in time that will be turning around in the next few years, but it relies heavily on equity. There's currently no debt. And diversification is critical for Mazor. They rely exclusively on sales of 2 robotics platforms within primarily 99% of single specialty within medicine. So diversifying will be a very important thing for Mazor to do moving forward to help them protect themselves. And then a cost-benefit analysis. As we know, reimbursement rates are declining in healthcare, and Mazor needs to show data that supports the cost-benefit analysis for hospitals to be willing to spend spend almost $1 million on a piece of capital equipment. Again, my recommendation for Mazor is buy, and this is based on 2018 forecasts. A few things to mention here is that there are 25 systems ordered in FY16 Q3, so just last quarter, and that was the same number of systems that FY15 saw in total. So we're seeing a huge acceleration of growth from a sales standpoint. Strategically, they're also focusing on these ambulatory surgery centers, which are a very new market for robotics and offer significant growth. As I cite, in 2015, 45% of cases are now in an outpatient setting, whereas in 2005, only 5%. So there's a huge opportunity to grow within the ASC model. And then as far as installation of units, those numbers went up from 96 to 131, which was a 36% increase from prior year. So significant growth overall by Mazor. We also see increased utilization and recurring revenue of 30%. So basically we're seeing these service contracts increasing, so that's becoming a bigger part of their revenue model, as well as disposables are increasing as well, and that just translates to use. So again, increased by 30%. And then the Mazor sales force, aside from the Medtronic partnership, has increased to 20 capital reps and 63 clinical specialists, up about 20% in each category from prior year. And these are some of the other financials looking at. I think this report, it shows some expected targets in 2013, but this is a report as of 2016, so I think there was some just sort of clerical errors there. But we're seeing revenue composition as the systems disposables and others, which are the service contracts, increasing significantly. Forecasts of they're already at about 32 million so far this year, and they're expecting by the next few weeks to be at 35 million, and then a significant increase in FY 17 and 18 as well. And that's it.
Thank you, John.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. John, when will they be cash flow positive?
FY 18 is what the data showed. The analyst reports discussed.
Okay. And so your basic valuation is based upon the 11 times sales ratio.
Right. I was trying to find some additional information. I just felt that the enterprise value to sales was really the only thing I could go with.
Yeah.
For as much information as I could sort of, the analyst reports, there were a few of them. I was hoping to find more information on that, but I felt like that was my only way to make a sort of an adequate valuation for this company.
Okay. Can you draw some parallels between this and was it Intuit, the Da Vinci robot system?
Intuitive. Yeah. So as far as growth, we're seeing, I think there's some additional information I could probably get from the initial days of it, Intuitive, and how quickly they grew.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing growth targets that are certainly 25-30% year over year with Mazor. And I'd have to look sort of deeper down into Intuitive to know exactly how those match.
Because it seems to me just that the big event here is going to be when they get to be cash flow positive.
Right.
That should really help the valuation.
Right. Absolutely. And again, I felt that some of the reports were all over the place as far as when that would take place.
Yeah.
But more of them than not seem to show 2018 as the cash flow positive year.
Okay.
So, John, can I also ask a follow-up kind of related to that? I'm looking at the stock price history there, and it looks like it started a pretty steady climb in May, which is, I think, when they partnered. The Medtronic thing may have been announced. And it's climbed up to, and it's been trading around like 20 to 23 or 24 for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're valuing it at 27, and I'm curious, is it just the uncertainty of not knowing when it's going to go cash flow positive that prevents the market from pricing it higher now? I'm curious why you think if it's worth 27, the market seems like it's a little bit skittish. It stayed below that. It's kind of peaked up a little bit, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Again, I think based on that EV to sales multiple, I feel like we're really looking at revenue and projections of revenue. So I feel that if we're able to get some of those increased revenue, I mean, if FY 17 looks significantly better than 16, I feel like we'll have an increased share price for sure. I mean, I just think some of the activity that's happening with Medtronic is certainly leading towards a pretty stable share price right now. I know that's dipped a little bit, but really they've just started selling this new system as well. So I do think that there's going to be some buzz around that. And once those enter some of these academic institutions, I do think that's going to help the company grow, and there'll be additional orders placed. I mean, a lot of the orders have been placed before. I mean, just from that North American Spine Society. without surgeons even seeing the device, but just learning about it and placing orders sort of on faith because their colleagues are telling them. I mean, I think there's a buzz right now, and we'll see sort of how that impacts share price.
Okay, thank you.
John, I just had a question with regards to the your comment about diversification. It's clear that right now Mazor is focused on neuro and ortho, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if revenue diversification is, if you think revenue diversification is going to be important for them, how likely is that given that, you know, joint replacement and neuro, you already have, what was it, Stryker, MedTech, MedRobotics, and then you've got for, I think, was it knee as well, Transenterix and Intuitive. Mm-hmm. What areas of diversification do you see to be feasible for Mazor? And secondly, given the access, you know, are we taking into account their access to capital compared to all of those other firms? I know that, you know, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think the diversification will probably start more on the skull-based side of things. So with DBS procedures and cranial procedures, I do think Mako is a robotics company that, you know, Stryker acquired, and they probably have a significant market share as far as total joint replacement goes. But I do think that Mazor has a unique opportunity on the cranial side.
Okay.
And so I think some of those, what we'll see is we'll see systems placed, and that's a big part of the revenue model, of course, but I think we'll see disposables increase, and I think we'll see service contracts renewed significantly because of those other specialties that are now being covered. And quite frankly, those specialties overlap with spine because those surgeons, many of those neurosurgeons are doing those cranial procedures as well. So, you know, whereas you might have somebody, you know, using it for half their patient population, now they can use it for the entire patient population.
Okay. And when you mentioned in terms of revenue base, the systems account for 65% of their current revenue, and you're expecting that renewal of service contracts will account for more as we go on. But how long do these machines last, and how often do they need to be replaced? And given that because we're seeing the consolidation in the providers and the hospitals, you know, are they going to have a lot of discount and bargaining power? Are their consumers going to be pretty largely concentrated compared to Mazor?
So you're asking about the longevity of these devices?
Yeah, and how, because if systems accounts for 65%, systems is like the revenue that comes in when the devices are placed in the hospitals, right?
Sure.
So how long does it take for them to actually, like, what would be a reasonable figure in terms of how many hospitals can they sell to if they're looking at the U.S. market, for example?
Oh, at what point will they hospital not need another to be saturated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the numbers that we're talking about right now, they're so low in comparison to the number of hospitals that are out there, not to mention ambulatory surgery centers.
Okay.
But I still think that there's huge opportunity, just like Intuitive, where, you know, I think there's an enormous opportunity for them. I mean, they only have a tiny fraction of the market right now.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking about, you know, on the East Coast, there's only 3 of these right now. And we're talking about, you know, significant opportunity to continue growing. So I think they would take a while to get to that point of saturation, especially with the strategy to go after the ambulatory surgery centers.
Okay.
But I do think that the service, this is a very labor-intensive product. I do think there's a sales force and a clinical force, and that's going to grow. And I do think that hospitals will be willing to to pay for that service to facilitate the procedures.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Make sure you send me the file so I'll just go over it and provide some comments to you, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think next up we've got Rodney. Rodney, are you ready to go?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you guys hear me okay? I don't have a headset available. It kind of broke. Ready to go. How do I share my screen?
You should see it on the screen, Rodney. It should say share screen.
Share screen. Okay, I have multiple screens, so let me know if you see the presentation.